There we go. So yeah, it's lovely to see you all today. Thank you ever so much for coming along and for our event, where we're really just sort of reflecting and looking back over the last sort of couple of years of the Farm Crap App project that's been supported by Agritech Cornwall. And this was really an opportunity just to come together and look at what we have been doing through the project, look at the app in its current form, and then also just to say, have any questions or comments as to its applicability and its use out in the industry, both for farmers, for advisors, for contracting businesses, and for producers of organic amendments that farmers might be using within the soil, really to just try and help farmers make the most of their organic manures and use them both to build soil health, to displace bagged fertilizer, to provide economic benefits and environmental benefits. So I'm going to share my screen, which obviously has the presentation attached to it. I'm sure we're all really familiar with Zoom and Teams meetings and all that sort of thing as we go along. We're not a huge number of us today. So again, if you have any questions or any comments as we go through, please do shout. You can either just unmute yourself and discuss, or if you wanted to put something in the chat, you're also more than welcome to. So obviously here to talk about the Farm Crap App Pro, which we've been working on for the last couple of years through Agritech Cornwall project. And obviously the app allows farmers to help you better use and make decisions about how they're going to use their organic manures and slurries. There we go. And especially if we think down here in Cornwall, we've got quite a lot of manure or slurry to deal with. Just under 5.5 million tonnes of manure that's coming from our cattle and our sheep. And although this may seem like a huge amount of manure that we do have to deal with, it also gives us a really good opportunity, because if we can use that manure in terms of its available nitrogen, phosphate, potash, organic matter that it's bringing to the soil, then actually it can provide a lot of benefits. And good nutrient management planning is one of those keys to farm profitability. Nutrient management planning is amazing in terms of its ability to sort of, if we can do it correctly, tick all of our environmental boxes that we could possibly need. Do you want to improve soil health? Then use organic manures. Do you want to reduce the amount of bagged fertilizer you're applying? Then you can use organic manures. Do you want to build soil biology? Do you want to improve nutrient cycling? All these things are able to be optimized through our use of nutrients that we find within our slurries and manures. But how we use them, and the amounts and the application timings and the methods that we use, all mean that we have something that can be used for a huge benefit for an individual farm, for a catchment, for a group of farms, for a county, or can come with a lot of environmental risks. And if we look back at a lot of the studies that have been done in terms of the farmers' use of the sort of manure and nutrient management planning tools that have existed in the past and do currently exist, a lot of that research tells us that actually the current tools that are out there are often underutilized. Why are they often underutilized? Well, sometimes it's because they're complicated. Sometimes it's because actually it can be something that you have to be sat in front of the computer to look at, where actually when you're making those decisions, you're out in the field or you're on the tractor deciding what to do. And so these were some of the things that really led us to start to look at the idea of how can we really help farmers understand the importance of using their organic manures, but also how they can use it to best effect both economically, environmentally, and for wider society. So I'm sure most of you who have sort of been down here for the last few years or have been associated with the work of the Rural Business School will know that the Crap App's not new. The first version of the Crap App was developed back in 2014. And it was developed for a couple of reasons. One, because as I say, there was a lot of that research coming out saying that a lot of the current nutrient management planning tools were quite underutilized. But also the fact that at the time we were working with the Swarm Hub, and we were realizing when we were looking at the Google Analytics that came from the Swarm Hub project, that we were getting an increasing amount of farmers and traffic onto the website through mobile phones. And obviously it seems sort of, second nature to us now, doesn't it? But this was, you know, back in 2014. And so we thought actually it was a really good opportunity to try and see whether apps were something that farmers could use to help them make management decisions. It coincided with the launch of some really key publications in terms of Think Manures, an industry-wide publication which was looking to really try and demonstrate the benefits of optimal use of organic manures for farmers. And so the app was really developed to really try and take that information that came from RB209, combine it with images in terms of application rates, application methods, different materials that might be able to be used, and really try and put that in a format that farmers could use when they were out in the field spreading or trying to plan their applications to understand what was going on. The first version, as I say, from back in 2014, was very much an awareness raising tool. So it was only designed to understand what was going on with those inputs. So how much manure or slurry you were putting onto the field. It had a calculator function, so that quick fire option to look at what was going on, and you could also set up field records. One of the key developments from those early versions of the CRAP app were that we were really keen that it didn't need to have mobile phone signal or be connected to the internet in order for it to work. So all of that background information actually sits within the app, so it doesn't need to be connected or have any signal for you to be able to get the information that you need. So that version we took out to farmers and to students at the college and to young farmer groups and industry to really see what they thought. And they really liked it. And we got great feedback from farmers. But a lot of that feedback said, well, it's great, but it would be even better if it did X or Y. And so being able to incorporate some of that feedback allowed us to then continue this development process and sort of build in a bit of a development cycle for the app to be able to try and allow it to be able to do what farmers were wanting it to do. And some of those things that came out from those feedback of those early sessions were really around, well, it's great that it does manure, but I also want to understand what's going on with my bag fertilizer equivalent so that I can use it to do whole field nutrient management planning rather than just to taking account of what's going on with any applications that I'm putting on of manures and slurries. There was also a real desire, especially from a lot of the young farmer groups that we spoke to understand how they could use that mapping capability. So instead of having to set a field up and describe its boundaries, you could actually do that through the mapping capability, which now exists within the app. For those farmers who are sort of been using those RB209 values, but are also then doing some lab analysis of their own manures and slurries, they wanted the ability to be able to use those bespoke values. There was also the desire to look at alternative organic materials, so for farmers who were using composts or sludge or biosolids or digestates, that we could put those new some of those newer materials into the app as well. And also that we could deliver crop-specific nutrient requirements, so it could provide that whole field and whole farm nutrient management planning option. And so we took some of that feedback on board, and then in 2016 we launched a beta version of the Pro, which had 3 crops in it, so that we could just test to see whether what we'd done and how we tried to collect all that feedback was really working and was still that simple to use and easy for farmers. And then from that beta version back in 2016, we've then had the CRAP App Pro, which has obviously been developed through the Agritech Cornwall funding. And there were 2 really exciting points at this when we went into this version of the app. Firstly was obviously we had the new updated versions of RB209 that came out from AHGB, which provided us with a lot more information, not just in terms of updated nutrient values for some of the manures and slurries, but it also allowed us to be able to extend that catalogue of manures and materials that we could include within the app. But also, as we know, as part of the Agritech Cornwall funding, it was also our challenge to really start to look at, well, how could the app be used to help not just farmers make management decisions, but help others, those other industries and those people that are allied to agriculture, to be able to help anybody who's dealing with organic materials and organic manures to be able to make better use of them. So we were looking at how the CRAP app could be used to help advisors and really help facilitate that transfer of information from the farm to the advisor, where they could then help that farmer make best decisions. How it could be used for contractors who might be using some of these newer methods of application to really help demonstrate to their farmer clients the benefits that come from using some of these low trajectory equipment. And how it might be used for those people who are manufacturing some compost or sludges to be able to show, again, demonstrate the benefits that those products have, both in terms of a nutrient value, but also in terms of building soil health. All the way through, the whole development process has really been iterative. I think from that early sort of understanding as to why current management tools weren't used very well, it was really key for us that actually we included those end users in the development right from the start. So we didn't just want to create another product that basically sat on the shelf and didn't get used. We wanted to create something that would genuinely solve a problem. And so all the way through, we've had a key group of farmers who have been fantastically instrumental in terms of providing feedback, in terms of testing beta versions to show us which bits they liked, which bits they didn't, to start to really evolve that product to what we've got now in terms of something which is genuinely useful and can help farmers make management decisions. But we were also really keen, as I said at the beginning, that it was accessible to farmers. So again, it still works once you've downloaded it onto your phone or onto your tablet. It doesn't need to have any phone signal, it doesn't need to have any internet connection for it to work. And we were really keen that we continued to keep that because of some of the connectivity issues that we have, and also because then that information is there when you need it and isn't reliant on anything else. So we've been through that development process again as part of this project, and we now have the app that's all ready to go and is being used out on farm. And obviously now, as we reach the end of this development phase of the CRAP App Pro, it's a really good opportunity to just reflect and to talk about some of the features that it has now and the ways that it can help farmers, advisors, and contractors to help manage that nutrient management planning process. So it's still completely free to use. It always has been free to use, it always will be free to use. And it still doesn't need any mobile signal to work. Obviously, once you've downloaded it, it's then on your device. And as I say, it doesn't need any connectivity. We were also really keen to make sure that it was available not just on one platform or the other, but that it was available on both. So you can download it through the Google Play Store, or you can download it through the Apple App Store, and you can get it on all of your devices. We were really keen that, although it now has that built-in functionality to be able to set up detailed field records and actually to aggregate that up across the farm so that you have a reflection of what's going on in terms of nutrient management planning across your farm, we were really keen that even though we've got those in-depth features, we were still able to keep that sort of quick level of functionality with the calculator. So the calculator still exists where you can get a quick fire check in terms of what an application of manure is providing in terms of crop available NPK, as well as total amounts of NPK that are being applied in that application, as well as that ability to set up those detailed field records. We've incorporated those new RB209 values from that update. And again, that's allowed us to amend some of those nutrient values that are associated with the manures and slurries, but also start to include a lot more of those different products in terms of composts and biosolids and digestates. So really trying to, incorporate all of the materials that farmers might be applying on their fields. It has been designed to do that process in terms of whole field nutrient management planning. So it is now at the point to sort of taking on and incorporating that feedback where you can actually also not just log your applications of manure or slurry, but you can also log any fertilizer applications that you're applying as well. Once you've set up your field and you decide which crop you're going to grow, it then gives you those crop nutrient recommendations. You can enter in your soil test, and every time you go in and you apply a new application of manure, slurry or bag fertilizer, it will then subtract that from the total so that you've got a running balance in terms of what that crop needs throughout that growing season. But as I say, the big change for this version is that we've been designed to facilitate that information sharing between users. So actually, again, for farmers who are working with advisors, they can share that information either through the app or export it out of the app as a CSV file, depending on what works best for them. So that actually that information doesn't just have to sit on that one device, it can be shared between multiple users so that everyone can collect that information and work together. So if we just look at a little bit more detail in terms of some of those features. As I said a minute ago, we've got that calculator, which is providing that quick fire check in terms of what an application is providing in terms of crop available, nitrogen, phosphate and potash and sulfur, but then also total amounts as well. Not only can you do that for the different types of manure, but it's also now got those features so that if you are applying with some of those low trajectory equipment, so for slurry, if you're applying using a dribble bar, a trailing shoe or an injector, or for FYM, depending on when you're incorporating it, you can take account of that the additional nutrients that become available through those different mechanisms as well. We've also, as I said, incorporated some of those different manure types. And what that calculator allows you to do is it gives you that quick fire check on what that application is providing. So again, when you're out in the field, when you're looking at what's going on in terms of how much you're applying, you get a real quick and easy way to look at what the fertilizer equivalent is, but also the total amount that that application is providing. Similarly to the earlier iterations of the app, we still have those images built into it. So there is an image library within there with different application rates. So you can use that slidey bar, slide it along until what matches on the floor if you're out applying at the time, or that your application rate matches what you've just spread. And then the calculator will then calculate what that's providing in terms of crop available and total N, P and K. But as I say, you can also now completely set up your farm on the app. And it's an easy process. You can do that either by searching for it, either on a postcode. So if you're not actually on your farm when you want to do this, you can do this by just tapping in the postcode. Or if you are actually standing on your farm while you're setting it up, it will automatically find you and you can then navigate each of your fields. When you're setting your farm up, obviously you go into the first bit where you put your farm name in. You then include your location, your rainfall data, and that rainfall data is obviously really important in terms of being able to calculate your soil nitrogen supply. You can also then enter in your fertilizer costs. So that then allows the app to calculate the economic equivalent of any manure or slurry application that you're putting on. So as well as giving you your crop available nutrients from that application, it will also demonstrate the economic saving if you are having to put that application on in terms of bag fertilizer equivalent. You can work in whichever unit of measurement works for you. So if you work in gallons an acre, if you work in cubic meters per hectare, if you work in tons per acre, whatever you work in terms of units, you can set that at the beginning and it will do all the calculations and the conversions throughout the app for you. And as you can see from some of those screenshots there, once you've gone in and set up your farm, you can then go around and set up all of your fields. And it's just a case of mapping each of your fields and then entering in the crop that you're growing and any soil test information, and then it will start to calculate your recommendations for you. But setting up your farm is the first step. So once the farm's there, it's then about setting up each of your fields. And as you saw on that previous slide, in terms of those mapping fields there, you can set those up on the map by putting your finger around the outskirts of all the boundaries, or you can just draw a line, whatever works easiest for you. And then for each of those fields, you can enter your last soil test results. And again, that information is really important for doing things like making sure that you can get the right recommendations based out of RB209. Entering in your previous cropping, your rainfall or your climatic data, and then also looking at your soil type and then the crop that you're currently growing. And once all that information is then added into the app, it will then generate the nutrient requirements for that crop that you're growing based on your conditions, your soil type, your previous analysis results, and all that information as well. Once that information's in, every time you then want to go in and spread, and that might be spreading manure or slurry, it might be applying artificial fertilizer, you just go in and you create a spreading event. And when you create that spreading event, the app then asks you a series of questions in terms of the type of manure or slurry that you're applying, the application rate, which again, you can just move your slidey bar till it matches, and then other bits and pieces, which will then give you your crop available nitrogen, phosphate and potash. And again, it will give you I'm just going to move this so I can actually see the picture down there. Okay. It will then give you your crop available, so that's the fertilizer equivalent. It will also, as you can see from that picture over here on the right hand side, give you the total nutrients so that you can have an understanding of the percentage of those nutrients that's actually available. And then, as I was saying a minute ago, in terms of those economic savings, it gives you the fertilizer savings for that field from applying that as a manure or a slurry. And then every time that you want to actually go in and apply something, you follow that same process again, and a record is generated that is kept within the app, and you can also then share or export to wherever you'd like to keep it for record keeping purposes. If you, as I say, if you are actually having your manure analysed, so if you're sending samples of your slurry or your FYM off to the lab that you then want to use, and you can use your custom figures, you can then put that in terms of your manures. So when you're setting up your farm at the beginning, you can add in different manure types that you might be applying. And again, you can do that depending on whether you've got your lab analysis results, and depending on the format that those lab analysis results have come in as to whether you've got elemental or whether you've got the oxides, you can convert that and put those in so that you can then know that you're using the values that are bespoke to your farm and that are correspond with your manure or with your slurry. Again, you don't just have to add one product in there if you've got a range of products, if you've analysed your manure, your slurry, but also if you've got any of those alternative materials in terms of digestates or biosolids or any of those other things that come with the requirements in terms of the analysis, all of that information can then be added to. And then again, when you then go and you apply that manure in the field, instead of clicking on the bespoke value, you just click on your manure, and that allows you to take account of that rather than just the book values. So you can put all that information into the app. You can keep that. Again, it's really good in terms of record keeping. It's sort of, your phone is always with you. You can then make decisions and get that information when you need it, when you're out in the field. But also another key function that we've done with the app is actually that ability to share your data. And you can share your data with whoever you like. But there are a few key areas that we've been looking at in terms of providing that ability to facilitate that information. So if you've got a team of people who are working on the farm, then all that information can be shared. So that everybody can have a version of the crap up on their phone, and then field records and farm records can be shared across multiple users. So everybody knows what's happening in terms of what's been applied and what needs to happen in terms of those nutrient management plans. As I said, when we started looking at potential uses for the app at the development phase at the beginning of this part of the project, we were talking to quite a few advisors who said, well, actually, what's really useful for us is the ability to be able to get that information from the farmer so that we can complete those nutrient management plans or help in terms of facilitating with that advice that we're doing in terms of crop health or crop growth or anything else. And so if you're a farmer user, you're now able to share that information in terms of what you're applying with your advisor. You can have a shared version of the app so that they can see instantly what's going on in terms of your applications, or you can have periodic times where you then send them your information. But it actually makes that process a lot easier because you're not having to find it in the book if you've got a spreading record and actually try and then put it into a format. It can just be shared at a touch of a button. But what we were also looking at was for contracting businesses to really try and help them in terms of collating what's happening on the farm and that ability to create records, as well as the ability to be able to demonstrate the benefits of some of those different types of equipment. So there's two really easy ways that you can do this. You can export your data as an Excel file, which is very easy in terms of clicking that export file, or you can share that. And it's just a case of setting up a password, and that password then allows that data sharing to be very, very secure, and the information only to go to where you need it sent. So that's some of the new features that we've included in this latest development of the app. And I suppose just thinking back a minute in terms of some of those original reasons why we set it up, now thinking, well, what are those benefits of using it and how is it helping each of those sort of target audiences that we had of the app at the beginning? Well, for farmers, the benefits include the fact that you've got a really easy to use way now to record and manage those manure applications. Once you've set up your farm on the app, it's then there. And it's a couple of clicks on your screen. You're then able to record what you are putting on in terms of different applications, in terms of on different crops, and it's all there without having to sort of, collect lots of bits of paper. It also allows you to use those nutrients that are in your manures and slurries more effectively and providing economic savings. And it does that not just by providing that information in a way that you can assess the fertilizer equivalent of nutrient value of those things, but it also allows you to do things like assess the impact of soil tests. So looking at the impact of soil pH on fertilizer on nutrient availability of some of those materials, and nutrient indices. So actually really starting to create those sort of integrated nutrient management plans. And also that ability to be able to integrate manure and slurry applications with bag fertilizer, which saves costs. And that's something that we're all really looking to try and do. So we've been developing a few case studies just to look at how crap app and to try and really demonstrate some of those benefits that come from the use of the crap app. And Alex, my colleague, has been doing some work on the Duchy College farm, really looking at actually following the recommendations in terms of following the recommendations through the crap app to look at whether we could achieve any economic benefits. And so we paired off some fields that were growing different crops. So we had 2 arable fields, 2 silage fields and 2 permanent pasture fields that we were going to look at, and we would split the management of it. So we looked after, or we provided the recommendations, or crap app provided the recommendations of 3 of them, and then the farm manager provided the recommendations or did their normal nutrient management plans for the other 3 fields. And I've just chosen the silage fields to look at here. So say one was managed using the crap app and one was managed by the farm manager as normal. And these fields were both going to be growing silage, with a target yield, not a massively high target yield, of 5 to 7 tonnes of dry matter per hectare, and they were going to be cut 4 times a year. Now, that information, when you then put that into the crap app, then generates what that crop needs in terms of its fertilizer over that growing season. And that's the starting point for then starting to look at, well, what's being applied, and then what still needs to be applied, and then the best manner of putting that application or meeting that crop's nutritional needs. So those fields then, before they sort of entered into the study that we were looking at, they both received slurry over the winter, and they both received about 2,500 gallons an acre, or for anyone that works in cubic meters, that's just over about 27 cubic meters per hectare. They'd also received some bag fertilizer, a blend of nitrogen and sulfate at 50 kilos of nitrogen per hectare. And then they were cut for first cut silage. After first cut silage, they both then had another 2,000 gallons per acre of slurry, 6% dry matter slurry. And then obviously throughout that, we were looking at recommending and doing the planning through the farm crap app. So then our crap app field at that point, we did not put any more fertilizer on, because those nutrient applications in terms of the slurry and that fertilizer had met that need for the target yield that was coming off. The farm field that was being managed using the sort of traditional or the conventional way of nutrient management planning on that field had another 50 kilograms, had another application of bag fertilizer. And then we assessed the yield. And actually, we did yields measuring using the quadrats to look at what was going on. We didn't see any significant difference in yield between the fields. And obviously, there was economic savings in terms of that additional fertilizer application that had gone on, both in terms of the cost of the fertilizer, but also the cost in the fuels or contractors or whoever was putting that fertilizer on. And certainly it made the farm manager at Duchy start to think, if there was more slurry available, then we could really make more use of it and reduce those inorganic fertilizers, as well as those other benefits that coming from that slurry is providing in terms of improving organic matter and also encouraging soil biological activity. But also, there are benefits in terms of the fact of it doesn't matter what you look at in terms of what's coming down the track in terms of the sustainable farming intensive initiative, in terms of our need to reach net zero, in terms of the farming rules for water. Nutrient management planning wins on all of those things in terms of environmental outputs. So if we can manage our manures and slurries more efficiently, if we can better integrate those uses of manures and slurries with our bag fertilizer requirements, then we're going to be doing a really good thing, whether we're looking at improved water quality, whether we're looking at reducing greenhouse gas emissions, whether we're looking at improving biodiversity, whether we're looking at improving air quality. All of those things, if we can use our manures and slurries more effectively, we're hitting all of those environmental targets. And so nutrient management planning is one of those things which is a win-win-win on all of those parameters. So if we can help with these tools to help give farmers the ability to be able to more effectively plan these things, then hopefully we're going to really help to put those really good cemented foundations in for creating, farms that are much more sustainable. But in terms of advisor benefits, it's providing that easy way to share records between farmers and advisors to help with providing those nutrient recommendations and saving time. Instead of when it's coming up to an inspection or any of those sort of things, really trying to find all that information can be sent seamlessly. And as I said earlier, they can be shared instantly or on a regular basis. And everything that you've put into the app can be downloaded as an Excel file and sent over so that you've got a record there that can be used. And it merely means that actually that time that your advisor's then on farm can be used talking about advice rather than trying to find some of the paperwork that you need to create that advice. For contractors, as I say, it's an easy way to keep track of what all those different spreading events that are happening across farms. It means that you've actually got a way to be able to then download that information and provide it to help with that feedback to customers. You can also use it to showcase the increased nutrient availability from some of those low emissions spreading applications. So again, if you're a contractor and you're using a dribble bar or an injector or those sort of things, you can demonstrate the improved nutrient availability that's coming from those pieces of equipment rather than just putting it on with a splash plate. But it also can provide those records that can be used in terms of compliance or farm assurance visits to show that you've done that nutrient management planning. Also, as I say, we've been talking to compost providers and others who can now have their material included within the app. So again, if you're applying large amounts of compost or any of those other things, all of that information is then included in there. So you can take a full account of everything that you're applying on those fields. It obviously then provides you the ability to demonstrate, how much nutrients some of these things have, and also what that means in terms of a fertilizer equivalent. And although this isn't going to do your all of the Environment Agency permitting for you, it does complement that paperwork and allows you to have a sort of, something that can be used for nutrient management planning fairly simply. So hopefully that's just given you a bit of a flavour of some of the developments that we've put into the Farm Crap app. I would just like to say at this point, thank you ever so much to Foam Kerno, who were the organisation that did all the amazing wizardry in the background in terms of turning all of our wishes and all of our slightly strange requests into something that looks so easy to use from the front end. It's a real balancing act to be able to turn a huge amount of complex information into something which is easy to use, and they've been absolutely fantastic in terms of doing that process. Obviously acknowledging the funding that's come from Agritech Cornwall, but also really importantly, thank you to all of the farmers, to our contractors, to our businesses that we've been working with, who have provided that really invaluable feedback as we've been through this process, and advice in terms of how we can create something which is a genuinely useful tool, rather than something which is just, as I say, another thing that doesn't get used. So yeah, thank you very much to all of our businesses and to all of the farmers that have been part of our beta testing group. And as I say, if anybody would like to have a go at using the app, please do. Obviously, we've come to the end of this development cycle with the work through Agritech Cornwall, but we are always still open to ideas and feedback as to how we could make it even better. And as I say, if you would like to get in touch with us to tell us that, please do, and we will try as much as possible to be able to look at how we can keep it being a useful tool that farmers can use. So thank you ever so much for coming along today. At that point, I'll stop sharing. If anybody has any questions or comments, please do let us know, and say you can unmute yourself and just ask us outright, or if you'd like to put it in the chat, you're also more than welcome to. I'll stop sharing myself. Do we have any questions from anybody? I'm going to stop recording anyway, so you can all be as honest as you like.